Thank you for joining us. All right, we'll call the meeting to order. I'm David Martin, Chair of Commission on Teacher and Administrator Education, Certification, and Licensure and Development Commission, present via Microsoft Teams and from Central High School Building, 4th floor boardroom at 359 Northwest Street, Jackson, Mississippi, 39201. It's a special call meeting of the Commission being held today, Friday, May 10th, 2024. Approximately 8 a.m. pursuant to Mississippi Code annotated 25-41-5 with commission members present via teleconference. Notice of this meeting, including date, time, place, and purpose of the meeting, identification, location available to the public, has been posted. Audio recording being made of the meeting and minutes of the meeting will be recorded. So just a reminder, y'all make sure to unmute yourself or wave really wide so we can tell who's on there when we get ready to do things. Meeting this morning is being called to order at 8:07 a.m. Friday, May the 10th. As we call your name, please state your location of your presence for this meeting. Dylan Ball. Present, Tupelo, Mississippi. Sir. James Creel. I'll move to those pretty quickly that we know aren't here. Rebecca Gray. Harry Hill Taylor. John Howard. Tim Hubbard.
Present, Longwood, Mississippi.
Teresa J. Rowe.
Present, Starkville, Mississippi.
Thank you, ma'am. Dr. Daniel Kelly.
Present, Gulfport, Mississippi.
Thank you, ma'am. David Martin, President, Mercado, Mississippi. William Murphy. Dr. Teresa Poole.
Present, Hattiesburg, Mississippi.
Thank you, ma'am. Dr. Shelley Simmons.
Present, Gulfport, Mississippi.
Thank you, ma'am. Susanna Chaplin.
Present, Ruth, Mississippi.
Thank you, ma'am. Aaron Wilson. All right, with that, we do have a quorum. Quorum is present for location stated for conducting meetings with teleconference means. Item 3 is the adoption of our agenda. I'll entertain a motion for approval. Please identify yourself for the record. I'm going to bring it along.
Present.
Happen with a second. Thank you, ma'am. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye. Aye.
Motion carries. All right, we're going to move on to item 4. Discussion and/or approval will begin the Administrative Procedures Act process to revise Mississippi Code 7.3, State Board Policy, Chapter 14, Rule 14.6, to establish Rule 14.6.24 and 14.625, and amend Rule 14.6310 related to the disciplinary process policy. We have Mr. Jonathan Dennis and Mr. Scott Dion.
Thank you, Commissioner, Chairman Martin, members of the Commission, Dr. Murphy. Thank you for being available to attend this meeting, this special call meeting. The Office of Educator Misconduct has been in conversation with legal counsel for Mississippi Department of Education and with leadership relative to some rules that we think should be considered for just revising the rules to make it more efficient for the office. Particularly, Department of Education, Educator Misconduct Evaluations is requesting approval to begin Administrative Procedures Act process to establish rules 14.6.24, 14.6.25, and revise Rule 14.63. As you all know, we have an abundance of breach of contract cases that come through our office, and we have, again, in conversation with legal counsel and leadership, have proposed some changes to the rules by including a formal reprimand for the breaches of contract. As you have in your backup material, the change to the rule would require that the Office of Educator Misconduct may issue a formal reprimand for an educator's first violation of Standard 10 of the Mississippi Educator Code of Ethics and Standards of Conduct. The formal reprimand would serve as a warning that if a second violation occurs within a 5-year period, the educator's license may be suspended, subject to suspension for a period of 1 academic year. A formal reprimand may be issued to an educator for an alleged violation of Standard 10 of the Code of Ethics and Standards of Conduct without the necessity of a hearing on the matter. An educator may only receive one formal reprimand within a period of 5 years, and any additional violation of Standard 10 of the Code of Ethics and Standards of Conduct shall be resolved by hearing or agreed order. Educators who breach or abandon their contract with a school district for other employment opportunities shall not be eligible for a formal reprimand. That would put in place the ability to have discretion in those cases of breaches of contract. Some of the ones that are not so egregious, we would be able to issue that formal reprimand, and that would alleviate some of the backlog of those cases for the office. Of course, we would also have the discretion to move forward with a breach of contract case, as we usually do, for those more egregious cases. We're also requesting that there's a consideration for amending the rule relative to the breaches of contract for physical and mental health certification, and that educators who breach or abandon their contract with a school district for physical or mental health reasons place their fitness to perform the duties as educators in a classroom at issue. Educators alleging physical or mental health concerns that cause them to breach or abandon their contracts without first being released by their school board have the burden of providing their fitness to resume the duties of a licensed educator in Mississippi. Educators who breach or abandon their contract with a school district for physical or mental health reasons shall be required to submit certification from a licensed health professional stating that the educator is fit to resume the duties of a licensed educator in Mississippi. And failure to provide acceptable certification will result in the suspension of the educator's license for 1 academic year for the breach and continue through the date of submission of the acceptable certification. So at present, we often get breaches of contracts where the educators are claiming that the reason for the breach was for mental or health concerns. And we would just like to address that to make sure that if that is the case, that before they come back into the classroom, that they are fit mentally and physically to perform their duties. And the final is an addition to the rule, and it's relative to exhibits being submitted at hearing. Currently, when we enter exhibits, everything has to be approved. We're just trying to streamline the process, and that we request to consider amending the rule or adding to the rule that all exhibits submitted 7 days prior to the hearing shall be admitted into evidence at the beginning of the hearing and distributed to the commission, subcommittee, or hearing officer for review. All documents received or generated in the regular course of business by the Office of Educator Misconduct shall be admissible. The commission, subcommittee, or hearing officer shall be the sole decider of the weight and value of documentary evidence submitted by the parties. Again, this is just an effort to streamline the process. It's more of a procedural matter that Attorney Dennis could probably speak more to if you have any questions relative to that change. So again, this is an effort to reduce or to streamline the process for dealing with breaches of contract based on the amount that we receive in the office. That would allow the office to concentrate on more egregious cases, specifically standard 4s, standard 9s at present. The standard 10 cases for the school year 2023, 2024 have some numbers. Cases closed by agreed order in that year were 44. Cases closed at hearing by the commission were 14. Open cases beginning July 1st through 2023 to present, 47. And total standard 10 cases submitted by districts for school year 23-24 to date is 103. So again, considering the amount of cases that breaches of contract cases that we receive and staffing considerations, the office, along with leadership and council, are requesting that the commission consider these.
All right. So you've got 3 things on here and slightly different. On the first one, you mentioned the formal reprimand for breach of contract. You mentioned something about egregious versus not as egregious. Can you give us an example of when that would be and when it wouldn't apply?
Sure. So the way it stands now is the rule is set to where a breach of contract can only be resolved through either a hearing or an agreed order. So when we look at a case of perhaps an educator's spouse has relocated to a different part of the state, and they move and they submit a reasonable notice to the district that we could consider that for that formal reprimand, that would be a less egregious case. And the more egregious cases are those where an educator abruptly abandons their position. We've seen those with educators walking out in the middle of the day. Of course, those would certainly proceed forward with either that agreed order or going to hearing. It would just be, we would take breach of cases into consideration as we do other cases. So standard 4s, there may be cases that are less, or there are cases that are less egregious where we have that ability to offer perhaps probation or perhaps to close it based on the district's response, just based on the severity of the infraction.
And we don't have that leeway now, like you do with a standard 4?
We do not. As the rule is written now, the language indicates that the Office of Educator Misconduct could dispose of cases or close cases based on a few conditions. One is lack of severity. It's just a matter of, when you say lack of severity, does that relate to the educator or does that relate to the district? So we're trying to get away, put some more specific language in the rules that we would be able to say, hey, here's a formal reprimand. If this occurs again within the 5-year period, then you will be subject to that suspension.
David.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
Mark. Okay, as a school board member, Scott, well, I know in the policies that we write, we have that leeway with our employees. So I'm trying to understand, before the district sends this to you, have they not considered that already?
Right.
How outrageous it is. I know we do, in my district, determine whether or not we're going to allow an employee to get out of a contract based upon, one, the subject area he or she is teaching, 2, whether or not they're leaving because of a spousal requirement to move or relocate. We have certain things that are in place as well. So I'm just trying to understand, why would there be a need?
Right.
Because I'm thinking this is focusing upon the district already.
Right. That's a good question, and of course it's at the discretion of each district. So there are districts that are going to submit breaches of contract in just about all breaches of contracts, or anyone who resigns or is not released from their contract, they're going to submit it for suspension. There are a handful of districts that we see that, and those districts do report a lot of those breaches of contracts, whereas some districts we never see Appendix C. So it's at the discretion of the district ultimately, based on the rule. If an educator, if the local district board request suspension, regardless of the reason, then we have to move forward with the case at present, the way the rule stands now. So it would be great if the districts would take those into consideration, who may have a reasonable reason for breaching their contract, but some districts, again, we don't see that. Everything is pretty much across the board.
And I guess the other thing that if I could still have the floor, Jim.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
I think she froze up.
Yeah, I think she did. We'll give her a good second. Just for the record, Mr. Wilson, I said you joined us about 8:10. Would you tell us your location? We're waiting on her to unfreeze.
Lumberton, Mississippi.
Lumberton, thank you, sir.
So again, this is just another tool in the toolkit for dealing with these breaches. Just giving us this language would give the Office of Educator Misconduct that discretion to look at each case on a case-by-case basis. And when there is, those reasons, educators are leaving for spousal relocation or an illness, a major illness, we would be able to dispose of that case with that formal reprimand.
How many of those do you think you fall under that category?
It's hard to say. About half and half, actually. We have a lot of egregious cases where the educators they don't feel like they're getting the support they need. And then the other side of the coin is that, hey, my husband's moving, or it's before the school year begins and they were offered a position that pays more money. So we would be able to look at all the factors, the totality of the circumstances, in making that determination.
And I don't mind giving some latitude, but like you said, just kind of the C part particularly, breach of abandonment just for employment opportunity elsewhere is almost just what it says.
Right, and again, we'd be looking at the totality of it. So is an educator signing a contract in March for a school district, and in May, they put in a resignation, and it's not accepted, and so, the school district still has opportunity to fill that position. Of course, if you're in the middle of the school year and you put in a resignation because you have a better job offer, then no, we would not offer that formal reprimand in that type of situation.
And you bring up that about pay, just from actually, on the school and hiring side, I mean, to be honest, unless you're looking at new graduates, usually Mays doesn't have a whole lot of applicants either. Is there a way you could have like a cutoff? Could we say, May 1st, April 30th? I'm sure it's open to do whatever we want. Is that something I guess you'd be open to?
Sure, that's certainly something that we could consider if that's what the direction the commission wants to go. Again, the sole purpose of the changes to the rule would be to allow that discretion to dispose of some of these cases. We could certainly entertain or provide a cutoff date for that for those breaches where an educator signs a contract and they resign before the school year starts. Certainly something we could consider. And we do get a fair amount of those cases. I believe that the bills have been introduced to get a cutoff date established, but it did not pass. I believe it was maybe April, middle of April, if a district had their educator sign a contract before that date, then they would be let out of the contract. But again, that legislation didn't pass. So this rule would hopefully help to solve some of those issues.
I have a question, if I don't mind.
Sure.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so, Mr. DeJong, so in that regard, if a person violates that and they get a formal complaint, how long, is that always on that person's record?
So
Or online?
the formal reprimand would provide that if you receive the formal reprimand, if you breached again within a 5-year period, you would be subject to suspension. So it's a 5-year period. So once they get that formal reprimand, anything after that, we would bring to hearing or offer an agreed order.
Thank you.
Ms. Hamlin?
I had some technical difficulties for some reason.
No problem. Yes, ma'am, you had a question, I believe.
Yeah, I was just asking about the fact, I can't even remember that. It's lost my thought. I'll come back to that.
I think the evidence, one, I think that's kind of, like you said, it just puts it in there and clarifies it. I think that's something we've already looked at. As far as I know, the cases I've dealt with, I know even if they bring it in the day of, I don't know. Offhand, I can't think of any evidence we didn't accept. I don't see a question on it personally.
I do want to know, how do we choose 5 years as opposed to 3 years or whatever?
It was just a number that was discussed with leadership and council, and it was a number that was proposed.
And I guess I asked that because of the fact that I'm wondering, at this point, we've gotten people hopefully to where they're saying, well, you know, if you really do breach your contract, you will more than likely get your license suspended. Is this going to weaken what we've already established?
So one of the challenges that we have is that because of the number of these cases that we get, some of them, you know, they won't have resolution for quite some time. So the way we are disposing of standard 10 cases now is, again, there's no way to dispose of a standard 10 other than by agreed order for suspension of license for 1 school year or agreed order for suspension of license for 1 school year. Most of the educators that we send agreed orders to, they don't respond or they decline the offer. And that's what creates the backlog of cases. As a result of the limitation on how these cases may be disposed of and the volume of the cases received, lack of staff and resources to adequately process and dispose of these cases. So when we get a breach of contract complaint now, the first thing we do is we send out an agreed order in hopes that the educator will accept that agreed order. However, again, as I just stated, oftentimes they just ignore it, or they won't pick up the certified mail, and we can't do anything with that case. That's what creates the backlog. We can't, at present, if it's an egregious case, we can't close it. It'll just sit there. If we can't get them served properly, we can't move forward with it. So if they ignore the agreed order, and we send a hearing packet out and they ignore that, that case is going to stay there until usually what occurs is that 2 or 3 years down the road, when the educator's license is about to expire and they try to get it renewed, they can't because they have an open case on them. And they want to know, well, why am I just now hearing of this? So there's a lot of challenges. There's a lot of moving parts. In order to, if we don't get that agreed order, we have to bring it to hearing at this time. And the amount of time and resources that it takes for these standard 10 cases is what's creating that building up. And you know, a lot of states, they don't even consider breaches of contract educator code of ethics issue. It's more of a personnel issue. Now, I certainly see the reason to have some kind of penalty, especially when there's an abandonment of their employment within the school. You know, we certainly don't want that. But the reality of the situation is now is that it's just almost impossible to process all of these cases. We do get a lot of agreed orders, but you know, there's still a lot of cases that are sitting there. So if we were able to have that tool to look at these cases on a case-by-case basis and offer that formal reprimand in those less egregious cases, then I think we would be able to tackle a lot of the backlog of these standard 10s.
Commission members, if I may, the intent of the change in the specific language of may issue is intended to not weaken our current structure. We want to have the option to be able to issue a formal reprimand, but we don't want to give the appearance that educators will be granted a formal reprimand. That's the reason for putting in the may instead of a shall. As it serves now, our current language says that you may be subject to suspension, and it currently doesn't work as a deterrent. Oftentimes educators come in and they're like, well, I thought that I could talk my way out of getting suspended, or if I explained my situation that the commission may be lenient. And so we're finding that because of those issues and the fact that the language already states that we may, oftentimes it doesn't function as the deterrent that we want it to be. And the legislator shot down any efforts to make it a shall be suspended. And so this is just giving us another tool to dispose of those cases that could have, and maybe even in some cases should have been disposed at the district level.
Another question.
Yes, ma'am.
Has the department, sounds like we need someone else in the office because of the substantial number of cases. Ms. Dennis and Mr. Jones, it sounds like you guys need some more help. I don't know if that has been discussed, someone to possibly handle those. Secondly, have we thought about using a process server to get this, get the agreed orders delivered to the individual, to the educator?
Certainly, we've considered different ways to perhaps serve the individuals. There are part. Okay, so yes, there have been discussions within the office of trying to figure out a way to process or to serve these individuals. That is something that's being considered. We'd have to find a process server company to do that. We can certainly look into that. At this point, of course, we don't have that, but that is something that has been discussed.
How long, when you get an appendix C from a district, how long does it take you to put together and have like a formal agreed upon order offer?
That's a relatively quick process, especially with the new MECA system. The complaint's already built into the system. So we basically just have to fill in the blanks of the educator's information, and then we send that out certified mail, that agreed order.
I was wondering if it turned around quick enough, could it be part of the packet from the local district's board when they vote on allowing or not allowing somebody to get out of their contract? They submitted it 10 days before the board meeting to you, that, you know, this is coming down and you got it in and got it back to them. Could they, in effect, serve the educator at the board meeting? Or with their decision after the board meeting?
I don't know how that would look logistically or legally, but that's something we could certainly look into.
I can speak to that.
Okay.
Because of the way the rules are written, we have to wait until the board has formally voted before we can even move forward with taking action. So it wouldn't be possible for us to serve them at the board meeting because the board would have to meet, vote, and then provide those minutes to us in order for us to be able to take action.
Gotcha. Okay. All right.
Oh, yes. So if we were to consider adding a cutoff date for the breach in order to go to pursuing other employment, what would you all feel would be a good date? And also, we could also consider that there's a date already in place. I'm not sure. It varies a little bit based on the legislator of when non-renewals go out each year. And it could be that we place the same date as the non-renewal will be the date that's the cutoff, if that would work.
On that one, I can probably help you with. So normally, I believe the way it's written is you have to inform non-renewals by its tax day, it's April 15th, or 10 days after the budget is approved, which is what we normally run into. So actually, the governor hasn't signed it yet, so we would still, so if we were going to put a date, I'd probably say the April 15th is a hard date. Just that would be definitely one I would say, rather than the second part, because right now they would still be able to get out from under a contract because we don't have a signed budget for next year yet. All right, Al, any other questions or thoughts or stuff we need to look at regarding that one? On the physical and mental health, so you would just kind of take that case by case, whatever the position they went to solve, you would turn it in, look at it from there?
Yes, that's correct. Again, we see a lot of breaches based on the reason being mental or physical health concerns. Again, we just want to make sure that if that is the reason for the breach, that before we let them back into the classroom, that they have some kind of documentation that they can submit to the office from a physician or another provider to indicate that they were fit to go back into the classroom. But it would be a case-by-case basis.
But with that, I like the documentation of return as well. All right. Any other questions, thoughts? Got any other recommendations?
Dr. Martin,
Yes,
Chairman Martin, I'm a little torn with this formal reprimand. I mean, I'm okay with the physical and mental health piece. I'm okay with the other piece that, I think I would have to say I would like to take the first piece under advisement for this timeframe and maybe have some more discussion about that. That's just my personal feeling about it at this point.
All right. And so we've got it listed as one agenda item.
Right.
So, is that a possibility? Can we separate them out, or you have to vote them all up, vote them all down, since it's one item? That's what I was thinking.
Right. So it's one item, but we can amend the item to not include the formal reprimand at this time and revisit it at a later time.
Okay. So, do we have a motion to remove the formal reprimand and consider the one for evidence and the one for the, mental and physical health?
Make a recommendation.
Yeah, so it's still going to be just one item with the removal of the section for formal reprimand.
I'll make the motion however we need to word it. Mr. Dennis.
So it sounds like the motion would be motion for approval with the removal of Rule 14.6.2, Section 4. That be correct, Mr. Dennis?
That would be correct.
I think that's Ms. Taplin's motion. That she's made a motion to approve it, what we have, just minus the formal reprimand, so approving the physical, mental health, and the evidence addition. Do we have a second?
Second, Count Hubbard.
First, we have a second. All right, any further discussion? All right, then we'll call for a vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Don't forget to unmute yourself.
Aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, well, it sounds like we can get together and maybe do a little working on that other one, and I think we can probably come to an agreement on it. But with that, that is the only item we had today, so appreciate that. I think it turned out a little longer than we wanted to, but as always, I think it's productive. It's good to have those conversations, and I appreciate the way everybody does it. We're not always going to be in agreement, but I think asking questions and figuring it out and still being able to work together is the best way we can be. So I appreciate y'all's time. Appreciate you putting that put together for us to have this morning. And just thank you all. So with that, we'll move to item 5, our adjournment. Entertain a motion for approval. Please identify yourself for the record.
Motion to adjourn, Ellen Godwin.
Thank you. Any second?
Second, Teresa Jean Rose.
Thank you, ma'am. All those in favor, please say aye. 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 Any opposed? Motion carried. We adjourn at 8:44 a.m. Again, thank you all very much. Appreciate your time. Appreciate MD, Dr. Murphy, Dennis. Appreciate y'all's time.